She was found face down in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, submerged in water so still and silent that no one heard her final breath. And when the paramedics arrived at 3:55 in the afternoon on a Saturday that was supposed to be a celebration of music, they could not revive her, could not pull her back from the edge of a tragedy that had been decades in the making. This was the woman who had once stood before 750 million people and made them weep with a single note. The voice that had shattered glass ceilings and sales records in equal measure. The girl from the gospel choir who became the most awarded female artist in history. Her name was Whitney Elizabeth Houston, and to those who knew her best, she was simply Nippy, a nickname her father gave her as a toddler after a comic strip character who was always getting into trouble. A prophetic name for a woman who would spend her entire life dancing on the edge of disaster while singing like an angel. Whitney Elizabeth Houston entered this world on August 9, 1963, at Presbyterian Hospital in Newark, New Jersey, though some records cite University Hospital as her birthplace, arriving as the third and youngest child of John Russell Houston Jr., a former Army serviceman and entertainment executive who had served under the Newark mayor, and Emily Drinkard Houston, known to the world as Sissy, a Grammy-winning gospel and soul singer whose voice had graced the backing tracks of some of the biggest names in music. Whitney came from musical royalty long before she ever stepped foot in a recording studio, with her mother being a member of the legendary Drinkard Singers and the founder of the Sweet Inspirations, the backing group that had supported Aretha Franklin and countless other icons. Her cousins included the legendary Dionne Warwick and Dee Dee Warwick. Her godmother was the Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, and her honorary aunt was Darlene Love. The bloodlines of American music ran through her veins like a sacred river, and on her father's side, she could trace her lineage back to Jeremiah Burke Sanderson, an American abolitionist who had fought for the civil and educational rights of black Americans during the mid-19th century. She grew up in a modest home in East Orange, New Jersey, a suburban neighborhood that offered stability and community after her family relocated there following the devastating Newark race riots of 1967. Her childhood home on Dodd Street would later become a pilgrimage site for fans who wanted to touch the place where a legend had been born, and the local elementary school where she studied would eventually bear her name, the Whitney A. Houston Academy for Creative and Performing Arts. Whitney's early education began at Benjamin Franklin Elementary School in Newark, where she was a bright and eager student who already showed signs of the extraordinary gifts that would one day captivate the world. But it was at the New Hope Baptist Church, where her mother served as director of sacred music, that Whitney truly found her voice. She joined the church choir at the tender age of 5, learning to play piano within those hallowed walls and absorbing the gospel tradition that would become the bedrock of her musical identity. At just 11 years old, she began performing as a soloist with the choir, and at 12, she made her solo debut singing the hymn "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah" in front of the congregation. Those who were there that day remember the stunned silence that followed, the collective realization that this child possessed something rare, something divine. By the time she entered Mount St. Dominic Academy, a Catholic girls' high school in Caldwell, New Jersey, Whitney's talent had become impossible to ignore. She would routinely accompany her mother to nightclub performances in New York and occasionally join her on stage. And in February 1978, at Manhattan's Town Hall, she received her first standing ovation when she sang Tomorrow from the Broadway musical Annie. She was just 15 years old. Throughout her teenage years, her mother taught her the technical foundations of singing, while she drew inspiration from the greats who surrounded her, Chaka Khan, Gladys Knight, Roberta Flack, and from the gospel tradition that had nurtured her soul. She graduated from Mount St. Dominic in 1981, fulfilling her mother's requirement that she complete her education before pursuing a professional career, and the world had no idea what was about to be unleashed. The late 1970s and early 1980s saw Whitney working behind the scenes, building her craft as a session vocalist for artists like Chaka Khan, Lou Rawls, and Jermaine Jackson, learning the mechanics of the recording studio while developing the vocal power that would soon make her a legend. She also embarked on a successful modeling career, becoming one of the first black women to appear on the cover of Seventeen magazine in 1981, a groundbreaking achievement that signaled to the world that a new kind of star was emerging. But it was 1983 that changed everything. Clive Davis, the legendary head of Arista Records, was taken to a New York nightclub to see this young singer perform, and he signed her on the spot, recognizing immediately that he had found something extraordinary. On February 14, 1985, Arista released her self-titled debut album, Whitney Houston, and the world stopped to listen. The album yielded 3 consecutive #1 singles, Saving All My Love For You, How Will I Know, and Greatest Love of All, and it spent 14 non-consecutive weeks at the top of the Billboard 200, becoming the best-selling debut album by a solo artist in history and selling over 25 million copies worldwide. She became the first African-American woman to receive heavy rotation on MTV, breaking down racial barriers that had kept black artists off the network for years. She was just 21 years old, and her voice had already become the soundtrack to millions of lives. The peak of Whitney Houston's career was a breathtaking ascent that seemed to have no ceiling. Her second album, Whitney, released in June 1987, entered the Billboard charts at #1 and produced 4 #1 singles, including the anthemic I Wanna Dance with Somebody and the emotionally devastating Didn't We Almost Have It All. With this album, Whitney became the first woman in history to debut at #1 on both the US and UK album charts, and she achieved what no other artist had ever done: 7 consecutive #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. Her third album, I'm Your Baby Tonight, released in November 1990, sold 8 million copies worldwide and showcased a more urban, contemporary sound that proved her versatility as an artist. On January 27, 1991, at Super Bowl 25 in Tampa Stadium, with the nation on edge as the Gulf War raged, Whitney Houston stepped onto the field and delivered a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner that is still considered the greatest national anthem performance in history. It was a moment of such transcendent power that it seemed to stop time itself. Then came 1992, a year that would define her legacy forever. She starred opposite Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard, a film that would become a cultural phenomenon, and its soundtrack, featuring her earth-shattering cover of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You, became the best-selling soundtrack album of all time. The single itself became the biggest-selling commercial single in history, and it earned her 2 Grammy Awards in 1994, Album of the Year and Record of the Year. She followed this with starring roles in Waiting to Exhale in 1995 and The Preacher's Wife in 1996, with both soundtracks achieving massive commercial success, the latter becoming the best-selling gospel album in history. By the time she appeared as the fairy godmother in the 1997 television version of Cinderella, she had become more than a singer. She was a global icon, a symbol of excellence and grace who had sold more than 220 million records worldwide and earned more awards than almost any performer in history. But behind the glittering facade of her public success, Whitney Houston's personal life was a battlefield. On July 18, 1992, she married R&B singer Bobby Brown, a union that would be marked by both passionate love and devastating turmoil. They had met in 1989 and felt an instant connection, with Whitney later telling Rolling Stone that they came from the same place, she from the projects of Newark, he from the projects of Boston. They had a daughter together, Bobby Christina Brown, born on March 4, 1993, a child who would become the center of Whitney's universe and eventually the subject of a tragedy that mirrored her mother's own. But the marriage was volatile, marked by accusations of domestic abuse, professional jealousy, and a shared descent into substance abuse that would ultimately destroy them both. Friends described their relationship as having a Bonnie and Clyde mentality, them against the world, but the world they built together was one of chaos and addiction. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, reports of Whitney's struggles with drug addiction, health problems, and her crumbling marriage began to surface, and the tabloids that had once celebrated her now feasted on her downfall. In a now infamous 2002 interview with ABC's Diane Sawyer, Whitney admitted to using drugs, famously stating that crack is whack, but she denied that her addiction had affected her ability to perform. The public was not convinced. Her next albums, Just Whitney in 2002 and One Wish, the Holiday album in 2003, were commercial disappointments, and her voice, once the most powerful instrument in popular music, began to show signs of wear from years of abuse. The woman who had once been America's sweetheart had become a punchline, a cautionary tale, and the decline was agonizing to watch. She divorced Bobby Brown in 2007 after 14 years of marriage, but the damage had been done, and the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. At the height of her fame, Whitney lived a life of almost unimaginable luxury. She owned multiple sprawling properties, including a New Jersey mansion valued at $6.5 million and an Atlanta townhouse worth $1.2 million. Her net worth had once peaked at an estimated $250 million, making her one of the wealthiest entertainers in the world. She drove a white 1991 Porsche 911 Carrera and owned a 1986 Rolls-Royce limousine, and her wardrobe was filled with the most expensive designer clothing money could buy. But the wealth that had once seemed endless slowly evaporated, eroded by years of drug addiction, poor financial decisions, and legal battles. By 2007, her net worth had dwindled to an estimated $6 million, a fraction of what it had once been. The mansion was mortgaged, the cars were sold, and the empire that she had built with her voice was crumbling around her. Then, in 2009, came a moment of hope. Whitney released her first studio album in 7 years, I Look to You, and it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 300,000 copies in its first week. The album was hailed as a comeback, and for a brief moment, it seemed that she had finally conquered her demons. The title track, with its soaring chorus about finding strength in something greater than oneself, felt like an autobiography, a testament to survival against all odds. She embarked on a world tour, and though her voice was not what it had once been, the audiences who came to see her did not care. They were there to witness a legend, to say that they had seen Whitney Houston live, to be in the presence of greatness. But the tour was plagued by cancelled shows, and rumors of continued substance abuse persisted. In the months before her death, she was working on a new film, Sparkle, which was scheduled for release in 2012, and she was preparing for the annual Clive Davis pre-Grammy party at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. She seemed hopeful, optimistic, and those who saw her in those final weeks remember a woman who was determined to reclaim her legacy. On February 11, 2012, at 3:55 in the afternoon, Whitney Elizabeth Houston was pronounced dead in her room on the 4th floor of the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, California. She had been found face down in an overflowing bathtub, submerged in water that had claimed her final breath. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, with atherosclerotic heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. Toxicology reports revealed a deadly cocktail of cocaine, cannabis, Xanax, Benadryl, and Flexeril in her system, a combination that had overwhelmed her heart and sent her into the water from which she would never emerge. The autopsy also revealed that her heart disease was so advanced that one artery was 60% blocked, a ticking time bomb that had been waiting to detonate. She was just 48 years old. The news spread like wildfire, and within hours, the world was in mourning. Fans gathered outside the hotel, leaving flowers and candles in a makeshift memorial, and the Grammy Awards ceremony that was scheduled for the following night became an impromptu tribute to the fallen star. Artists who had been inspired by her, who had grown up listening to her voice, who had dreamed of being like her, took to the stage with tears in their eyes and paid homage to the woman who had changed music forever. The funeral was held on February 18, 2012, at the New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, the same church where she had first discovered her voice as a child. It was a star-studded affair, with music royalty from across the globe gathering to say goodbye to one of their own. Stevie Wonder sang, Alicia Keys performed, and Aretha Franklin, her godmother, gave a eulogy that moved the congregation to tears. The following day, on February 19, 2012, Whitney was laid to rest in a private burial at Fairview Cemetery in Westfield, New Jersey, beside her father, John Russell Houston, who had died in 2003. A gold hearse carried her casket through the gates of the cemetery as fans lined the streets to pay their final respects. In her will, she left everything to her beloved daughter, Bobby Christina, a young woman who was already struggling with the weight of her mother's legacy and the scars of a childhood lived in the shadow of addiction. Tragically, just 3 years later, on July 26, 2015, Bobby Christina would die at the age of 22, drowning in a bathtub under circumstances eerily similar to her mother's, a haunting echo of a tragedy that refused to end. The legacy of Whitney Houston is one of breathtaking beauty and heartbreaking tragedy, a story of a woman who had everything and lost it all, who possessed the greatest voice of her generation and destroyed it with her own choices. She was the first black woman to break through the color barrier on MTV, the first artist to have 7 consecutive #1 singles, the best-selling female artist of all time until that record was surpassed years later. She won 6 competitive Grammy Awards out of 26 nominations, 2 Emmy Awards, 22 American Music Awards, 16 Billboard Music Awards, and held 34 Guinness World Records. But beyond the statistics, beyond the awards and the accolades, what she left behind was a voice that could make you believe in something greater than yourself. When she sang, it was not just music, it was transcendence. It was the sound of a soul reaching for the divine, of a woman who had been touched by something sacred and was trying to share it with the world. And yet, she was also a woman who could not escape her demons, who was haunted by childhood trauma, including allegations of sexual abuse by a female cousin, who struggled with her identity and her sexuality in a world that demanded she fit a certain mold. She was a woman who loved deeply and was loved in return, but who could never quite love herself enough to save herself from the darkness that consumed her. Today, Whitney Houston is remembered as one of the greatest singers who ever lived, a voice that transcended genre, race, and generation. Her influence can be heard in the voices of Adele, Lady Gaga, Alicia Keys, and countless others who have cited her as their inspiration. Her music continues to sell, to stream, to touch hearts in ways that few artists can hope to achieve. But her story is also a cautionary tale, a reminder that fame and fortune cannot protect you from the pain that lives inside you, that the brightest stars often burn the fastest, and that sometimes, the people who give the most to the world are the ones who have the least left for themselves. She was Nippy to her family, Whitney to the world, and the voice of a generation to all of us. And though she is gone, her voice remains, preserved in recordings that will outlive us all, a testament to a talent that was, and still is, simply irreplaceable. If this story of triumph and tragedy has touched you, if Whitney Houston's voice has ever moved you to tears or lifted your spirit, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Before Die, where we bring you the untold stories of the celebrities who shaped our world and left us too soon. Share in the comments below what you remember most about Whitney Houston. Was it her rendition of the national anthem at the Super Bowl, her unforgettable performance in The Bodyguard, or simply the way her voice made you feel when you heard it for the first time? And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another story from Before Die, because every life has a story, and every story deserves to be told.